Welcome to Esalen Live, where we chat with change agents and swim deep waters in an ongoing exploration of human potential. I'm your host, Christine Chen. Esalen is preparing to reopen in March, but the opportunity always exists to explore all kinds of sacred and spiritual places at home, within, wherever you are. Today, we're going to do a little something different on Esalen Live. We really want you to share with us in the discussion, in the chat, what makes a spiritual space? Physically, inside yourself, inside and out, at home, within. And I brought in another human of Esalen to help us get the conversation going. She's been with us before. Her name is Heather Martin. She's Esalen's head buyer and merchandiser, but she is also a Reiki master. Check her out. This is part of a Reiki class that she was in. Beautiful photo. Myself, my area of focus is yoga and the yoga life sciences, such as Ayurveda. This is actually me teaching on a Broadway stage in between shows. I'm also the author of Happy Go Yoga. So please welcome Heather Martin, my friend and Esalen, human
Hi.
at Esalen. Hi, how are you?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing well.
Yeah, great to see you. So let's get the conversation started. I really want to know from you, like, what started your journey in Reiki, and why did that feel like sacred and spiritual for you?
I think I didn't know it at the time, but when I first started doing Reiki, it was really to heal myself. And then the thought and the passion for healing others and helping along their journey showed up. So I think that's kind of the magic of Reiki is the whole essence of it is to heal. And once you heal yourself, then you're able to go out and help others.
And I'll admit that, I've only had limited experience with Reiki. And if you're watching on Facebook Live and you've had more experience with Reiki and have questions about it or want to contribute to this conversation, like, how does it work, Heather?
So basically, Reiki uses universal life force is what it stands for. It uses your highest source, whatever that might be, whatever you believe in, and that channels through your physical body, and then you heal by using your palm chakras. So
Mhm.
I do it without touching people. There are practitioners that touch people, and that's how it's done. It's energy. So energy is everywhere and at all points. So you can do in person, virtual, distance, all of that is the beauty of
Yeah.
it.
Well, you and I have had many conversations about what makes a space a spiritual space and how do we practice during this time in COVID when we're at home and maybe we used to go to a place like Esalen to have these spiritual experiences. And so the at-home practice, the at-home observations are in a different frame right now. And one of the things that you and I came up with is that we can make physical spaces sacred. And again, if you're watching at home, what makes your physical space sacred? Like, where do you practice and why? So, for you, Heather, what is that with Reiki or otherwise?
For me, when it's a sacred space, I the most important thing is that I feel safe in a space, and whatever that means in that moment, whether it's a hotel, whether it's your physical home, whether it's outside, I have to feel completely safe, and that means surrounding myself with whatever that might be in that particular circumstance. But what
Yeah,
about you? What makes it for you?
I feel like I can pretty much. So, this is me in my parents' former driveway at their home. And I feel
Yes.
like I find this place anywhere in the sunshine to me such an inspiration for me to find spirituality and feel sacred. I feel like outdoors and in the sun is where I'm super connected to my own practice. And so for me, that is always a place that the second I get in the sunshine, the second I smell the air, that takes me right to a place where I get in my body and get in my practice right away. And then the other thing we were talking about that you just mentioned was to feel safe and grounded. Like, what does that mean for you in your practice at home to feel safe and grounded? Because right now it's like a really big question of, are we safe? We have this virus, and how we're trying to keep each other safe with masks and social distancing. Like, what happens with feeling safe and grounded in our practice at home?
I mean, I always feel like that's the $1 million question for me. Because really for me, it's about having things around me that promote that, or promote the idea that, that I do feel safe, and that it's all about being able to feel that grounding experience. I think, like you were just talking about the sunshine, there's something about outside for me that always feels really safe, even if it's a wide, expansive space.
Mhm.
So it's nurturing, and there's something very nourishing about that. I think that, that's part of it. Would you say the same, or how are you feeling about it?
When I feel like for me, when a place feels safe, it feels like I can just be myself and dive into my practice. And sometimes when I'm with other people, that also, when I'm leading a class, that also means making the space safe as well. So, for
Mm.
example, I taught a class to the cast of a Broadway show in between shows one time. And, they put themselves out there and they're vulnerable all the time, every single day, just putting it out there. And so, for them to be able to have trust with their teacher or trust with each other, um, even just to name it, like this is a safe space, sometimes that's all it takes, just to have people have that conversion into like, okay, yes, I can feel safe with these people. I can feel safe being held. For me, that's really a huge part of it. And I know since you're so into creating spaces, you're so good at it. And then one of the things we talked about was in making these spaces sacred is objects of comfort. Um, I think about altars, I think about pillows, I think about the color of the wall. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm wearing one. She's always with me. I feel like it's my grandmother's wedding ring, and it's an object that makes me feel connected and goes back to promoting that safety and that grounded feeling. I also love the idea of, when you're creating a physical space at home, to have things that are beautiful. There's something about, whatever that means to you. It can mean anything. Uh, the beauty of it is sensory. It's calming and it's peaceful, and especially with items that you enjoy and that you, have a connection with it in your physical space.
And I think you've brought this up before, Heather, where the space itself should be filled with objects that mean something. Like, don't just take a magazine page and rip it out and say, this is what a spiritual space looks like. Can you go into that a little bit for us? Because you're so great with objects and placement.
Yeah, I think that the most important thing to do is to surround you in what makes you feel connected to your highest source and your own being. And kind of to your point about what makes you feel that you're just being able to be yourself. And that
Hmm.
really is about having objects around that promote that could be familiar, things that you have wanted for a while, things that you've admired, things that you've had things passed down from, you know, your family. It's all of those things that are really, that make it an important space.
Yeah, I definitely want to hear from some of the people that are watching on Facebook Live. Like Laura said, meditation and dancing is a place how she finds sacred and spiritual places within. I've shared this many times before, socially and with each other. That is my harmonium.
Oh,
Chanting always brings me to a spiritual place, and it wasn't until several years ago that that did that. And also, my dog, we have all these
mm,
creatures in our lives that can completely vibe when the spirituality is happening. And she always seems to come over. I pull out the harmonium, I roll out the mat, my energy shifts, and she comes over and always just sits square on the mat like that. They know, right? And so for me, she is one of the objects of comfort that just seems to show up. Like I don't even need to have to place anything. I place the harmonium, this other object of sacred value to me shows up, and she always just reminds me to our point earlier about being grounded. One thing that's
yeah.
really hard right now in terms of our spiritual space is reducing distraction. A lot of us
Mhm.
are working from home. Some of us have kids that are learning from home. So the home has become this container that is so different than it ever has been before, since we're going through this phenomenon in society, this sort of like global crisis. And so there are more things happening in the home. From your Reiki background and your knowledge of energy, Heather, how would you say that we handle this challenge of reducing distraction when we can't really escape distraction so much? easy,
Right.
not as easy as before anyway.
Yeah, I mean, my big suggest is always to create the time first for yourself, whether that's 5 minutes or whether it's 50 minutes. It varies for individuals and it will vary every day. Is to find that space and time just for you. So if that means turning off your phone, leaving it in the other room, turning off your computer. Everybody can do 5 minutes. Or longer if that can suit you, where there's no child, no, bring your animal in the space. I always recommend, because there's something magical that happens when there's an animal in the case, but where there's
Mhm.
just you and your ability to connect back to yourself and to, kind of stabilize and ground down for your own balance for the day.
I love that. I love the way that you said that. For me, like distractions also, I think a lot of times headphones also come into play, and like we play sort of
Mhm.
this music that doesn't have lyrics, and that can also block out some of the increased distractions that we're facing. Soft lighting's another one. This is also like hard to do, but easy to do at the same time. So, do you think soft lighting is a necessity for coming to this kind of place, sacred and spiritual practice?
For me, it is. I think that's going to individually, have a different meaning for everybody. But for me, I definitely love being in a space where even I flip off my lights in the room and it's natural light that comes in through a window. I like that aspect of it too. It just kind of, I don't know, there's something just soft, softening, and the whole idea of making it just a little bit lighter almost, even though it's without the light, if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. Hey, I wanted to bring in a really lovely comment that we just got here, and I'm hoping we can see it. I have to play with my settings a little bit in the future. But it basically says from Rafiki, one thought, something does not come from nothing. The very first something is impossible. Therefore, everything is, it appears, including me, you, living miracles. It appears, peace to you and all. And thank you for that. I appreciate that. I feel like this is
Beautiful.
sort of like right, and I feel like it's sort of like a nod to the first dip, the first step, the arrival process of coming to practice. I mean, people say to me all the time, they say, how often do you practice yoga? And I'm like, every day, all day, 24 hours a day, because it's a way of life for me, right? And I
Yeah.
know that you
Yep.
agree. But if we're coming to our place where we're actually going to say, like, this is the time for me to practice, that first step, getting there, for me has been really hard. It's been harder than usual, just getting to my mat these days because we're out of routine. We have these distractions. We're struggling with so much, and the things that we're used to have completely changed. What would you say, Heather, for you has been like that, taking that first dip, that first space where you can say, okay, yeah, this is when I'm going to practice. I'm going to do it. Because I think it's been harder lately. I don't know about you.
Oh, 100%. I think it's much harder being in this quarantine atmosphere. For me, it really is that I just begin. Sometimes, it's that whole mindset of, "Ugh, I don't really like want to do this," and there's this resistance. So I try to dig into my own resistance and figure out really what that's about. It's never about going to, as you were pointing out, the mat, or going into a meditation or going for a walk. It's none of that. It's there's something else that needs to like come up and bubble up and boil up, that you figure out what that is. And then you just begin. Sometimes I do 5 minutes because I'm like, that's all I feel like doing. And then other
Hmm.
times I can go for a walk for an hour and be thinking, oh my gosh, I need another hour. So it really just kind of varies. And I try not to set too many parameters. And that's what I'd suggest
Yeah.
for
There's a
everybody.
processional, right? Like there's a processional
Yeah.
that I know that I used to have. I'm like, gonna get my mat, I'm gonna get in my
Yeah.
car or walk to the studio or get on the subway or get on the train. And that processional starts to put me in that space where I'm like, I'm coming to my practice. But like these days it's like go to another room, lay out a mat in a corner. And so
Right.
the shift in the mental space to go to this spiritual place inside, I think is really what you and I have like the space within is kind of the name that we gave it. Like, how do we get into the space within? And for both of you, you and I had the exact same answer. This when we talked to each other was breath.
Mhm.
So definitely, if you're watching here at home, I wanna hear from you about your connection with breath and what that means for you when you come to your practice or trying to find some spirituality within during this time. Heather, breathwork is a huge part of Reiki. Can you explain what that is, and maybe we can learn a little bit in this time?
Yeah, the way we breathe and the way we hold our, it's almost like energy coming in and out. It's the breath of that. If we all notice when we start to have anxiety, the breath can either increase or it can go flat. There's things that you notice with stress or anxiety or just being in a different moment in time. And it's really about how can you come back. And for me, it's if I come back to the root of my Reiki training, and it's really consciously taking those breaths in and out so that it resets my body and it resets my mind, so I'm able to connect with that physical moment.
Yeah.
But what would you
What
say, in comparison, what about with yoga?
Oh, for me, it's interesting because pranayama has been an increasing part of my yoga practice. And in the Ayurveda tradition, Dr. Vasant Lad's 8-part yogic breath technique has been a huge part of what I've been doing during COVID. But I also found that Nadi Shodhana, alternate nostril breathing, has been a
Mhm.
massive part of my COVID practice because of the anxiety. I don't know if you felt that, like, all the studies and the stats of saying that anxiety is at an all-time high, and I'm usually not someone who spins in the brain. You know me, Heather. I'm like generally pretty like focused, and
Yeah.
I'm pretty clear about what I'm doing. And if you're at home and you feel this too, anxiety, it's okay to acknowledge that that's happening right now, and all the doctors will agree that. Really tapping into what helps you reduce that anxiety is helping us sustain during this time. Do you want to do Nadi Shodhana? Let's just do a little bit of it. What do you think?
Yeah,
Okay, let's do it.
absolutely.
If you're at home, join me in this practice of Nadi Shodhana, alternate nostril breath. This is one of my practices that drops me into my own breath and helps me really help with the spin of the brain and the feeling of anxiety. So take your left hand to your thigh and put your left palm flat down on your thigh and ground yourself. Take your right hand to your face. I'm going to turn sideways. Second and third finger at the third eye, in the brow center, slightly above. Third eye, Ajna chakra, sixth chakra, place of clarity, and we're trying to tap into that. Your right thumb on your right nostril, your fourth and fifth finger on your left nostril, and those tactile places are soft. Nothing is pressing into your face. There's just a sense of connection. Breathe in through both nostrils. Breathe out of both nostrils. Part your lips slightly. Breathe in through your mouth. Exhale, big sigh out. Close off your right nostril. Inhale on your left side. Breathe in, nice and gentle. Close off your left nostril. Open up your right nostril. Exhale, right nostril. Get completely empty. Inhale, right side. Close off right. Open left. Exhale. Get completely empty. Inhale left, all the way, all the way, all the way. Get completely full. Open up right side. Exhale right side. Little rhythm now. Inhale right. Close off right. Open left. Exhale. Inhale left. Close off left. Open right. Exhale. Take your right hand to your right thigh. Ground yourself on the right side. Roll your shoulders around and back and let them slide down your waist. Take a deep breath in through your nose. Open up your mouth, let out a big sigh. That's a little somatic breathing on the outside of that. There's a lot of different variations on Nadi Shodhana and Viloma Pranayama, which also is a variation on that as well. But that's just a little hit of, for me in my practice, what's really helped me drop into my breath. How do you feel about that?
That is incredible. Now I'm like, wait, Christine, I'm going to call you every morning. Let's do it.
Leanna Conley said that's a daily for sure. Nadi Shodana. Laura People said yes, thank you. And Laura and Leanna, I would love to know what it is that you also find in your practice and dropping into your breath as well. Let's move on to the next thing. A willingness to explore is something else that we found was part of a spiritual practice to get inside. Um, the willingness, that's a big word, isn't it, Heather?
It is a huge word and it's absolutely crucial.
Tell us a
you know,
little bit about that.
yeah, you have to be willing to experience and to call that in and to it's all of those things, that vulnerability, but there has to be a willingness um, to receive that. It's a huge, I don't know, it's such a big word and I love it.
Yeah. It's
It's
also
really
really
a
hard too
willingness to
because like
receive,
we
you know,
don't
the
sometimes
willingness.
we're not. Oh, I'm sorry, Heather, go
No,
ahead.
no,
What did
go.
you I was thinking, sometimes we want people to feel things. We want people as leaders in the healing sciences to be able to say, like, oh God, this feels so good. I want you to feel it too. Please, like, let me give you all the things that I've experienced and
Mhm.
to be ready for it in your own body, in your own life. So much of willingness is about timing, but I also feel like it's balanced with doing the work to get yourself ready. Like, how did you arrive at this place of Reiki to get yourself ready to receive?
I think that that's, I mean, such a great question for me because it was not easy for me to be vulnerable in that way. And Reiki definitely strips you down and it makes you, doesn't even, it invites you to go in and discover those portions of yourself that kind of were blocked off or unable to be vulnerable or unwilling to explore, you know? And it really kind of, for me, it was, okay, I'm either going to do this or I'm not. There's a decision that has to be made. Or am I going to stay unwilling or am I going to jump in and do something that's scary and you know, be willing to receive?
Yeah.
I
It
don't
for
know,
me,
Chen,
I just would
I
just
said
show up,
that.
like that's a big one for me is just show up. I love this comment from Diane, and sorry to go over your face there,
No,
Heather. Diane
no.
said, in terms of space, physical and internal, she said, in the midst of a room that isn't set up for quietness, in the midst of children or other working people, besides during times of being alone in a car, walking or sitting in the country, I practice driving every thought and fancy out of my mind as long as possible. Every few seconds that I can do it, I come back centered, present, connected to physical moment, including any people in it. This has been a favorite of mine lately. What we just did was lovely, lovely, coming to similar presentness. Thank you so much for practicing that with us, Diane. Um,
Yeah.
Everywhere can be a spiritual place is I think what we're coming to. And this for me is so part of wherever you are is to get out of your own way. I know for me, Heather, and this is like a big moment of me admitting this in this space of Esalen with this Esalen community is like I was in my own way so much. Like I couldn't even get there. I wasn't ready for it. I had such walls up for a lot of different reasons. And even now, like with COVID, things have changed a little bit too, where, other walls go up, other things change. And I also find myself getting in my way now. It's like my biggest challenge is like, who's stopping me from going to this place really is just me. I don't know if you've had that experience, or maybe you at home have had that experience of how to get out of your own way, or maybe ways that we can practice that. What do you think, Heather?
Yeah, for me, it's the most frustrating thing because I'm very similar. And the minute I think, oh, I did so good, I'm out of my own way. And it circles back around, and I realize, oh, dang, I still have some work to do on that. And it comes from, chronically, there's a whole thing about, why people get in their own way or sabotage their own self. And it's really, it can go much deeper than what it sounds like it is. It's very easy to say get out of your own way. It's another thing to practice that, and it is something to be really grateful for when you can. So
Yeah.
I think you're doing a wonderful job, Christine.
I noticed that you practice this is Anjali Mudra in yoga with the palms together, love and devotion. And mudras is such a big part of the way that I get into my spiritual space and get out of my own way, just having a tactile way to remind myself to get inside myself. This actually is a mudra hand yoga that's inspired by Japanese martial arts. In my book, I call it Love Multiplier, because it's really not, it's not from the yoga tradition, but it's a blend of things. It's literally like making a heart with your hand and like index fingers pointing out like antennas to the rest of the world to send love. And for me, also getting in a spiritual space means authenticity. I just wanted to share that so much of it comes from my culture. Um, Having altars, giving a shout out to elders and honoring them, and really understanding where we've come from, who we are, what's in our family history has always been something for me that's cued me to remember who I am. And I've, departed from this many times as the first one born in the United States in my whole family tree, lost my way many times. And as I get older, I find myself coming back to this place of like, well, who am I really? And for me, I feel like I don't know if that for you is the case, but it is the internal work. Who are we
Yeah.
really? Like so much of it
Yeah.
is like, where we came from, but I think also this idea of surrendering to who you really are is a really scary place.
It
What do
is.
you think about that, Heather?
I think once we all figure out kind of um, who we are, or even facets or pieces of who we are, there are no more excuses. It's suddenly, oh, wait, I can do this, or I have to do this. I have a calling to do it. I have a passion to do something or feel something or be somewhere. And it's no longer permission to, it's almost like it grants you permission to go and be out there and
Hmm.
do something to be of service. So
Yeah.
that's the way I.
The surrender is also, too, really difficult. The idea of being not in control of where your heart is, where your mind is, where it's all going,
Mhm.
and a lot of this is really unknown for so many of us. But I do want to thank everybody who participated. Brandon, Julie, Joyce, Iona, I see you. You're welcome for the breathing practice. Thank you so much for joining us. It's really great to be with another human of Esalen and just talk about spiritual spaces within and at home. And Heather, you've just done such a great job of curating the Esalen shop. And if objects of
Thank you.
comforts on your radar is something that you're interested in, she's really bringing together some classics of Esalen and what was in the bookstore before for the reopening with some things that are really inspired by her Reiki background. So I encourage you to check that out for sure. Esalen Live 10 is the discount code if you want to get anything. And chances are Heather's the one that picked it with all her healing heart. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Heather, thank
Yes,
you.
thank you. Thank you so much, Christine.
Yeah, it's great to see everybody. Thanks, everyone, for all your input and sharing your spirituality, your sacred practice, your ideas of what makes breath, what makes ourselves, how we can keep growing. Stay connected, everyone. Esalen.org, Esalen on Facebook and Instagram. Thanks, everybody. Have a beautiful Thursday.